All right, how you doing, Brian? This is the Equal Parent Project. First episode of the podcast, so we're gonna find out what goes wrong today, right?
Right.
Alrighty. I'm Frank Reynolds. I'm gonna jump into this disclaimer real quick. All right, disclaimer: the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the guest and host, and do not necessarily reflect the official position of Diablo Moto Media Productions LLC or its affiliates. This content is intended for informational advocacy purposes only and does not constitute legal, mental health, or professional advice. Some discussions may include references to legal cases, personal experience, or emotional sensitive topics. Listener discretion is advised. All guests appear voluntarily and are solely responsible for the accuracy of their statements. Names and details may be changed to protect privacy. Now that we got that out of the way. Alrighty, Brian, the floor is yours. So you got a custody case in Ohio. You live in West Virginia. In your intake form, it says that there were domestic violence allegations. You currently have supervised parenting time. This has been going on since 2018, which is a long time, especially to have supervised parenting time, right? And
Yeah.
then your stance is the bias of the court. So let's start with the case. We all have that first moment, right, where everything goes wrong. So the day that I'm assuming they left, right? Let's start there.
So basically, back in November of 2018,
Okay.
I was given um, by a officer
Okay.
a ex parte order
All right.
ordering me out of the house.
Okay.
Now, we had had an argument a couple nights prior, no physical contact, just had an argument. Most
Mm-hmm.
couples do.
Absolutely.
Um, but it escalated to the point where she felt that she needed to kick me out of the house.
Okay.
So I was given basically 24 hours to pack up all my belongings. So I did. And I actually called her at work and I said, I'm out. And she goes, "What do you mean you're out?" And I said, "I've packed all my stuff. I'm gone." And she responded, well, you didn't have to move all your stuff out. You could just take your clothes and leave. And I said, "But you court ordered me to leave the residence. I'm not leaving my stuff here because who knows if it's going to be there when I come back."
Mm-hmm.
And our son, we have two kids. Our son had a surgery in Charleston,
Okay.
and I didn't have a job at the time. I was low on gas,
Mm-hmm.
so I couldn't drive myself down. So I asked her if I could ride with them, and she agreed. So we met at her place of employment. I got in her vehicle with our son. She had to run in and do some things in her business. And so I'm sitting there talking to my son,
Okay.
and he says, "Well, you know, uh, there was something wrong with mommy's car," because he was young
Mm-hmm.
and he was about 3 years old.
Okay.
And I said, "What was wrong with mommy's Jeep?" And he got out of his car seat, he pointed to a piece in the console, and it was the wiper fluid jet there on the hood of the car. To spray the
Mm-hmm.
washer fluid
Yeah.
on your windshield.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I said, "Oh, well, how'd it get fixed?" And she said, "Well, mommy's friend fixed it." And I said, "Okay, mommy's friend." Well, I knew all of mommy's friends. And I said, "Well, that was nice of him." I said, "Well, who's mommy's friend?" And he sat there and kind of scratched his chin a little bit and said his name, which I won't say.
Absolutely.
But let's just say I call him POS. And if anybody knows what POS means, yeah.
I think we all know what POS means.
Yeah. And when you find out later what his history is, you'll understand why I call him POS.
Okay.
So I said, I said, "Well, that's nice that he fixed her Jeep."
Mm-hmm.
So she comes out to the Jeep, and then, of course, I'm sitting there and I'm fuming. because now it's all the pieces are starting to fall into place.
Mhm.
And I looked at her. She looked at me first and she goes, "What's wrong?" And I looked over at her with a smile on my face and I said, "Well, who's blank?" POS.
Mhm.
And she looked back at me and she goes, and I said, "I think I'm going to get myself to Charleston on my own."
Yep.
And she goes, "Now, wait a second." And, I said, we need to get going. Either I'm driving myself or we got to get going because he's going to be late for his appointment.
Mhm.
So basically, on the way to Charleston, we were arguing the whole time.
Okay.
And I had caught her in a lie. The night that we had our argument, I had said, you know, she had told me that she was going out to her parents with the kids. She took the kids out to her parents.
Okay.
But when she came home, late at night, and I questioned it. I said, "Why are you home so late with the kids?" And she said, "Well, so and so showed up at the house, and we were talking to them, and just when she was getting ready to leave, so and so showed up again, or somebody else." And I thought, that's BS.
Okay.
And I did something I thought I'd never have to do, and that was rummage through her purse. Go through her purse to see if I could find any kind of evidence. And sure enough, I found in her checkbook
Okay.
where she had gone to a restaurant and spent $42.
Okay.
And I thought, and this was the same night that she was supposed to be out with her parents. So the next day, she was going back out to her parents. That was a normal routine with her, going out to her parents with the kids. And I said, "Hey, before you go, I need to talk to you about something." She said, "What's that?" And I said, "Well," and mind you, this was all a lie that I was making up
Okay.
to catch her in her lie. So everything I was saying to her was a lie.
Okay. And this was all prior to the ex parte, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So I said, a friend of mine, who of course will remain nameless,
Mhm.
she was at the restaurant with her husband and they saw you come in with another guy.
Hmm.
And she looked at me and she goes, "There was no other guy." And I said, "Well, I couldn't lead on that I knew how much she spent." I said, "Well, who'd you go to dinner with? You said you were just going out to your parents." And she goes, "Well, so and so asked me to go to dinner, so I went."
Okay.
And I said, "So our friend is lying to me?" And she said, "Well, she must be because there was no other guy." And I thought, it's getting out of hand. And like I said, we had gotten into a heated argument because even though I was producing a lie, creating a lie to catch her in a lie,
Mhm.
something told me it was the truth. And sure enough, when we were going down to Charleston for our son's doctor's appointment, she came clean and said, "Yes, there was a guy there."
Okay.
So in my head, I'm thinking, jackpot. I found out that, what was going on.
Okay.
So long story short, you know, the ex parte was issued. I left the house. We had a court hearing set up, just a preliminary one. We both didn't have an attorneys. And I told her, I said, if we get attorneys, we are going to be at each other's throats.
Mhm.
Let's try to settle this, you know, between each other without getting outside forces involved.
And this is before you found out about the guy living there, right?
Uh, it was around the same time
Okay.
that we went to court and I found out he was living there.
Okay. Alrighty. Um.
So that was in November of 2018.
Okay.
In January of 2019, I would always go down by a area in the next city over that's right by the river. And
Okay.
I'd sit there and just ponder and think of every situation going through my head of what could take place.
Which is what we all end up going through, trying to figure out
Oh
what's going to
yeah.
happen.
Oh yeah. I mean, our brains run rampant. We can't help it.
Absolutely.
And I reached out to a friend of mine and I said, there's something about this guy that doesn't sit right.
Hmm.
I had known he'd been living there, but I didn't know how long,
Is
such and
this
such.
is this guy also POS?
It's the same guy. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
So my friend suggested I look up the court records.
Mm-hmm.
She goes, well, if you have a feeling there's something about this guy, he would have something in the court.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, I'll look it up. So I looked up under the Ohio court, the clerk's office to look up the court records. And I typed in his name,
Mm-hmm.
and sure enough, there was a record.
Okay.
So I did some investigating. I'm reading through. And on one of the pieces of paper, it came up that this person, I won't even call him a gentleman,
Yep.
is a tier 3 sex offender.
Registered, right?
No,
Okay.
I'll get to that. So, of course, I went from 0 to pissed off in
Absolutely.
0.2 seconds.
As you should be.
Right. So I text her and I took a screenshot of it and I said, I don't know if you're aware that so and so is a tier 3 sex offender.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it was 2 seconds later she calls me and she's saying, Brian, it's not what you think, blah blah blah. He's told me all about that. It's not what you think. So
Huh.
we had gone. Go ahead.
It says, as far as I can tell from Ohio's laws, if you're convicted at tier 3, you're required to register every 90 days.
Well, there's a catch, and I'm getting to that.
Okay.
So fast forward to 2020, I decide, if you can't beat them, join them.
Okay.
So I started studying pre-law at the local university,
Okay.
which gave me access to Westlaw.
Okay.
Westlaw gives you access to every statute, every law in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So what had happened was he was living out in Washington State, and he was convicted out there.
Okay.
When he moved back here, because his dad lived in Washington State, his mom lived in Ohio. When he moved back here, technically the law would require him to register. Well, he was involved, not personally, he was a witness in a domestic violence fight. I mean, he was there, but he wasn't part of it. He was a witness.
Okay.
And any time that you're a witness in any kind of accident, domestic violence, whatever it is, cops will ask you your name, social, they'll do a background check.
Mm-hmm.
They do that because if they pull you up and they see a rap sheet a mile long,
Or
they
warrant.
know that they're not going to trust your testimony.
Absolutely.
If they pull up background check and they see nothing on your record, they're like, okay, well, maybe what he or she says is admirable and we should listen to him. So they pulled him up. They found an active warrant out of Washington.
Okay.
For a failure to appear and failure to give an address. So, of course, they arrested him on the spot, put him in jail. He went to court in Marietta, Ohio.
Okay.
And there was a prosecutor and his defense attorney, it was court appointed, found a loophole in Ohio law that stated if your sexual offense took place prior to February 3rd of 1997, you don't have to register.
Okay.
His offense took place prior to that.
Okay. That makes
So
sense.
he was grandfathered in. He didn't have to register. But he still had to meet with the sheriff's department on a monthly basis just to kind of check in.
I'm looking at I've looked at a lot of Ohio law. right? Since I started really investigating this, I've noticed Ohio doesn't typically update their laws frequently.
No, they don't.
Because I'm looking at the best interest right now, or what would be the best interest of the child for parenting.
Right.
It's June 9th of 2011, but I can also see that there's been bills introduced repeatedly, mind you, to kind of become an equal parenting state. Um, but everything I've seen has been dated, which is wild to me. Is that they just don't they want to stay archaic in that sense.
Well, and it's a double-edged sword because it doesn't matter if a law is 60 years old or 30
Hmm.
years old or just last week. It can
Absolutely.
be used as precedence in the court of law.
You're right, but the problem that especially in your case, right? The problem that I'm seeing, the big issue is when you're, especially when you're in legal studies, will, shall, must, right?
Right.
Those words matter. Um, it's very clear just in the initial portion of the statute that if it's a single parent filing for like uh, full custody or primary custody, the court shall follow that. But if it's a
Yeah.
dual parent on equal custody, um, it says, where was it again? The court, in its discretion, may follow that.
Well, at the beginning of our split,
Yeah.
I had the kids because again, they were young at the time. Um, Basically every other weekend, 2 nights a week,
Hmm.
2 evenings.
Okay.
Um, and that's the way it was.
Okay.
But something had happened back on Thanksgiving of 2018 that kind of sent the ball rolling of the supervised visits.
And you've been supervised visits since November of 2018, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
basically. Um, because, and I'm sure a lot of men and women, I mean,
Hmm.
I'm for both parental rights.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
doesn't matter if you're men or a woman,
There's bad dads, there's bad moms, right?
yeah.
Absolutely.
Um, I was losing everything. I lost, uh, my marriage, my
Hmm.
family, my home, everything. And I was spiraling out of control.
Hmm.
And I had thought, never tried, thought of suicide.
Hmm.
And most men would say, yeah, I've been there, I've thought of it too.
Absolutely.
And I was honest with everything that took place. I had gotten up, I was staying with my brother at the time, and I had gotten up and went down to his family room, and he was sitting there watching the Thanksgiving parade, and just kind of feelings overwhelmed me because that's what we always did Thanksgiving.
Hmm.
I'd be in the kitchen making the turkey, and the kids and the wife was in the living room watching the parade.
Absolutely.
So I told him I had to leave. And he said, don't do anything stupid. And I said, I'm not. I'm just leaving. So I left and I drove up to Marietta because I wanted to see the kids.
Hmm.
And she refused to let me see them. She said that they weren't home. And I drove to a bridge that links West Virginia and Ohio up there. You can walk across it.
Okay.
And I walked up onto the decking where the sidewalk was, and I'm looking over the edge. And I seriously thought about jumping. I
Hmm.
really did. But my kids kept me from jumping. The thought of my kids changed my mind because I thought if I jump, who's here to save them? Who's here to fight for them?
Yeah.
So I didn't jump. I came back down, got in my car. I'm sitting there, you know,
Full of emotion.
full of emotion.
Hmm.
And little did I know that when I was texting my ex wife or soon to be ex wife, that she had contacted the authorities. So, next thing I know, my car's being surrounded by 4 cop cars and they're wanting me to go get checked out. at the local hospital. So, of course, I complied. I went up to the hospital. I was there for 20 minutes. That's it. Doctor came in, was talking to me. I explained to him what happened. He said, "You're not suicidal," and sent me away.
Mm-hmm.
And, which is what I told the officers. I'm not suicidal. I had thoughts of it, but I decided not to do it. Because normally when a person wants to commit suicide, they're not going to say, "I'm going to commit suicide."
Yeah, absolutely.
They just do it. And so because of that happening that day, that was used against me in court. And when I found out about the POS's history of sex offending, I brought it, to face with her. And I said, when we go to court next month, I'm going to bring it up. Well, next thing I know, I'm being slapped with supervised visitation
because you're a danger to yourself.
I'm a danger to myself and to the children.
Yep. Power move.
That's right. So I went to supervised visitation from March of 2019.
Okay.
Clear through June of 2023.
With no incidences of this ever again, right?
Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing took place between me and the kids. Nothing happened with me. I had gotten a job.
But self-represented the entire way through, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I had an attorney clear up through our final divorce hearing, and I've let him go because he was not getting me what I wanted.
Absolutely. And
I wanted more. What's that?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of parents on both sides have that issue with a lot of attorneys.
Right. They make it to where it's almost impossible to hire an attorney because they're so expensive.
Well, that, and it's a money system essentially, right? So I've spent well over 40 grand in my fight, and I'm still ongoing. So I fully understand that, but I heard something probably about a year ago from an attorney that stuck with me, and I hope attorneys do watch this podcast and these podcasts because stuff like this is important. This attorney said when they go into their pretrial hearing, as we all go into those, before the end of that hearing, that attorney is asking the judge and then fighting for his client or her client afterwards that this will happen. And what they do is they tell the judge that I want a trial date, the day of their pretrial hearing, and the opposing side will always argue against it because of the money. I'm going to make so much money by drawing this out. And they say, no, we're going to have a trial set because my client deserves finality. My client deserves to know that there is an end, that 12 months from now, my client is guaranteed an end. You will give us an end. Obviously, with custody can be reopened. Most states are very, very open to what's the verbiage I'm looking for? A material change, right? And a material change is such a BS quote, because a material change could be something as simple as I moved down the street, or something as severe as like an allegation. But with that, the fact that attorney, and that is the only attorney I've ever heard say that, and then demand that for their clients over and over and over again. And that's something that every attorney should be doing, because I can tell you right now, you and I have both walked into court. Our attorneys have fought. Our attorneys have allowed delays. Our attorneys have watched as the courts just create essentially a racketeering case against us by getting as much money as possible. And that's a huge issue. So I'm sure that happened with your divorce, and I'm sure it happened in my case repeatedly.
Well, the attorney that I had going forward with the divorce, I mean, there really wasn't much fighting going on. There was a couple of court dates, and we just went and things were talked about, and that's it. Open and shut case. But again, he didn't get me what I wanted. I didn't want full custody.
No.
Still don't want full custody. I just want time with my kids.
That's it. That's all we ask for.
Right. And, she, of course, is sitting there. Her parents have money. So they're just
Yep,
feeding the machine,
of course.
constantly.
Hmm.
And, mind you that she has worked 7 different jobs in the last 6 years.
Yeah,
And that was brought to light in court. I brought that up. And of course, she had an excuse for each one of them.
which is
And I
crazy.
can't,
That
yeah,
it
it is crazy. It doesn't show stability.
right. And then tack that on to how long was POS in the house? Is POS still in the
He
house?
just currently was kicked out.
Okay, so more stability issues, right?
Right.
Yep. Okay.
Because and like I could talk about this for 3 and 4 hours. As much stuff has gone on. So I'm trying to compress it all in whatever time we got.
Oh, before now that you've mentioned that, I didn't say this beforehand. Zoom will end at 40 minutes.
Okay.
Everything is the same to jump back into a Zoom call.
Okay.
So I'll have it reopened, ready to go for you to jump back in.
Okay. So uh trying to match up all my timelines in my head. We went to court in April of 2023.
Okay.
And in the parenting plan, I'm sorry to jump back and forth, but this
Not a
still
problem.
makes sense in the long run. In the parenting plan, it states that she is to let me know of any and all doctor's appointments, school functions, yada, yada, yada.
Access to
Everybody's,
information.
yeah, everybody hears all that. They all get the same thing.
Hmm.
Well, at one of our supervised visits, our daughter had walked in. Well, she was already there when I showed up, but I walked in the room and I see her arm in a sling. And I
Okay.
said, well, how did that happen? And she goes, well, she was playing soccer and one of the girls, had kicked the ball into the goal. She was the goalie. She went and got it. And another girl came up and tried to kick the ball out of her hands, but instead kicked her shoulder. So she basically broke her, um,
Is that the clavicle?
yes, thank you, broke the clavicle. And I'm thinking, I was not aware of this. She should have told me about, my ex-wife should have told me about this. So when we went to court, I brought it up.
Hmm.
And I said, why wasn't I notified of our daughter's broken bone? And of course, then she starts, and I'm like, I should have been notified.
Absolutely.
And even the judge said, you should have notified him. Now, the quick thing about that judge, because we have 2 different judges,
Okay.
this one had just left last year.
Okay.
She moved north in Ohio. I don't know what reason, but she's up north.
Hmm.
She was in our case the longest, and I filed a uh, conflict of interest with
Okay.
her, with the Ethics Commission,
Okay.
because my ex-wife's family has a lot of land up in Marietta,
Okay.
and this judge was renting farmland off the family.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
basically, it's a full circle.
Did you file a recusal?
I tried to get a recusal from her. She
Okay.
refused. She said if I felt it was a conflict of interest, she goes, I would recuse myself. And this was back in 2018 when she said that.
What? All right. So when you did this recusal, did you do it via motion or did you do a verbal motion?
I did via motion.
Okay. So you filed a written motion to recuse.
Yes. And I even
Perfect.
filed the complaint with the Ethics Commission.
Good.
They
Okay.
came in, investigated, and they found no wrongdoing. So nothing was ever done.
Absolutely.
But it's funny, that judge is no longer up in Marietta. She moved up north. So I don't know if more people were finding stuff out and that's why she moved. I don't know.
Okay.
So we got this new judge. I've only met her one time. We've only had one hearing with her. And I thought, well, let's do the one hearing. Let's see if, she's any better or worse than the other judge. Um, Personal opinion, she's worse. Um, when she did the verdict, it wasn't immediately. We had our court date in April. I got a final verdict in June. And she stated that my ex-wife's testimony was credible, even though my ex-wife had only said one sentence in court. And she said her testimony is credible. And in the 6 years that we've been battling this, almost 7 years, my ex-wife has yet to call a witness, to bring any hard evidence against me.
Okay.
And yet I have subpoenaed numerous witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
I have had hard evidence to support any and all of my claims, but they go unheard of.
Absolutely.
As a matter of fact, this last hearing, I had the counselor reports because I had to do a parental fitness evaluation in January of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And it stated that, I was to do bi-weekly therapy appointments for anger management.
Okay.
So I did. I've been doing them. I still do them.
Mm-hmm.
So I subpoenaed the notes from the local agency and I brought them to court because I'm not afraid to show it. If you're afraid to talk about something or afraid to show something, you would hold it back. If you're not afraid, just let it forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I brought the notes and the judge goes, I won't accept those. I want verbal testimony.
Okay.
And I looked at her and I said, why? And she goes, because I don't know if you've swayed the therapist to put down what you want her to say.
Okay.
And I just kind of looked at her and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Now, mind you, I had
and this was an official subpoena, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what I can look it up, but in Ohio, I'm assuming the subpoena process, if you're pro se, is that the judge just needs to sign or approve the subpoena and then it can be sent out, correct?
Well,
or the clerk.
The clerk has to sign it, but not the judge.
Most states it's one or the other, but either can do so.
Right.
But okay, so you've got a subpoena that you sent out, right? That was certified by the courts, and the judge is alleging that you coerced.
Yes.
All right, and now mind you, was this therapist picked by the courts? Or
no,
picked by the opposing party?
No, they were not.
So it was picked by you. And this is just kind of playing the devil's advocate side of things, like looking at it from the outside perspective coming in, right?
Right.
So I'm with you on judges need accountability. Absolutely. Every day of the week. But I can see both sides of that. Because
but the odd thing about it was I had subpoenaed my original therapist because I've had two different therapies.
Okay.
Or therapists, because one was covered under Medicaid, the other one was covered under Medicare, and I'm currently on Medicare right now.
Okay.
The one that was under Medicaid, I subpoenaed him to court.
Okay. And didn't show up.
Testify. Huh?
Did he show up or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Everybody's shown up that I've subpoenaed.
Okay.
And he testified and he said, I've not seen any kind of anger problems with Mr. Flynn, that, our sessions have gone, basically unsubstantiated with any kind of,
for the same judge, right?
Right, with the same judge.
Okay.
That basically, that I would need anger management, blah blah blah.
So you have a trend essentially of, hey, this isn't the first time a therapist has spoken with you, or given testimony to the courts, whether it be written or verbal.
Right.
Which is even lesser of a reason to deny.
He testified that the parental fitness evaluation that I got back in January, in 2020, 3 years prior, he said that it has expired. It's no longer valid.
Okay. But it's not mandatory either, right?
What's that?
Those aren't mandatory anyway, unless it's court ordered to repeatedly do them. It's not mandatory.
Well, it was mandatory to do it originally, so that's why I did it.
Yeah, so you had that one, but anything past that wasn't.
Right.
Okay.
So the other attorney, spoke up and she said, well, if that test is expired, what would you recommend him doing? And in my head, I'm thinking, here we go. I'm jumping through more hoops. And he said, well, there's an MMPI test that can be administered
Okay.
that gives a little bit deeper, um, what's the word I'm looking for?
Cognitive function. Oh yeah.
Diagnosis, of an issue. So now the court is dead set on me doing the MMPI test.
Okay.
So this last hearing with the new judge, she has come down and said, look, supervised visitation shouldn't take forever.
Yeah.
So I'm putting a stipulation that you have 12 more supervised visits.
Okay.
I am not to talk to my children outside of these supervised visits.
Okay.
And that I'm required to do the MMPI
Um,
and
the I just want to verify the verbiage. Is it Minnesota multiphasic personality inventory?
yes.
Okay, alrighty. And just for those that watch this, this is it's not a required by law test. It's a parental psychology functioning test. Under Ohio's law, there are standards required for this test for clinical testing. And then psychologists will administer the test, do a full evaluation on high conflict cases when mental illness is alleged. So the MMPI, right? We went over what it is. You weren't given any diagnosis, correct?
I haven't taken it yet.
Okay, so you haven't
because, because the parental fitness evaluation was $600. And I, of course, had to pay for it out of pocket.
Yeah.
The MMPI, I'm being told, is close to $1,000.
Okay.
I am on disability. I get one check a month. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And out of that check, I pay my rent, my utilities, my groceries. My car's been out of commission since November because the transmission shot on it.
Fixed income, I get it.
Yeah. So I'm on a fixed income. And I told the court that. Well, she said in the verdict that I'm refusing to take the test.
Okay.
I never refused. I just can't do it. I cannot financially take it.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been calling around different places to get pricing. I got a hold of one place in Ohio that will do it. They do payment arrangements, but they have a 6 to 8 month waiting period.
Okay.
So my visits are going to end before I take this test.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, my daughter turns 13 in October. Our son is
11, right?
11. Yes. I spoke up in court and I said, well, I would want them, to be testify in court. And the judge basically ripped me a new one. She goes, well, I don't know where you heard it from, but they're too young to testify in court. And I said, well, Your Honor, maybe I was told wrong, but I was told that, they were old enough to testify. And she goes, that's at a court's discretion. She goes, they've been interviewed already. And this goes back to 2023 because in the court hearing that we had in April of 2023, the judge did grant unsupervised visits for 4 hours every Saturday for 10 weeks, kind of a reunification process. So we did that. Every 4 hours, the kids would come to my apartment. They'd sit here, play video games. We'd have lunch, whatever. Next thing I know, I'm being told that the visits are being canceled because my ex-wife got with her attorney and they filed an affidavit stating that the kids said that I was calling them names. I'd have to pull up the affidavit and read exactly everything that was said.
Okay.
And none of it took place. None of it. At one point, my son and daughter were playing Wii baseball. My son was kicking her ass. So, of course, like any kid, they're going to get upset that they're losing. And she threw the remote down, went running to my bedroom, laid on my bed.
Okay.
So, as a father, I go in, try to console her. I'm rubbing her back. And I said, what's going on, honey? And she said, I want you to come home. And I said, well, honey, what we have right now is the way it's going to be for a little bit. Because I don't really want them involved, per se, in this whole shit show. Pardon my French.
Not a problem.
And she sat up on the bed and asked me something I never thought I'd have to answer. But she asked it, and I'm going to be honest with the kids. She goes, "Why did you leave?" And I said, "Well, honey, I didn't leave by choice. I was removed. I was pushed out of the house." And she goes, "So mommy's been lying to us this whole time?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Unfortunately, she has." And I said, "Because I've got a mound of paperwork where I've been fighting for the two of you for the past, at that point, 5 years
Mm-hmm.
that would prove otherwise." And, I'm sure she went home and talked to her mother about it, because in the affidavit, she stated that when the kids come home after visiting me, their demeanor has changed, that, our daughter, talks back to her and this and that. And, well, she's found out the truth and she's pissed at you. That's what it is. But you
Yeah.
don't want to admit that. So fast forward to this year.
Okay.
Back in March, I got a message on Facebook from an unknown party. Didn't know who this person was.
Okay.
And he said, "Hey, I've got a message for you from," and I won't give out the name of this person, not the name, but the screen name of this person.
Okay.
Uh, we'll just say MAGA. That's all we're going to say.
Okay.
That I need to listen to him. He's got facts about my ex-wife that I need to hear.
Okay.
And I'm like, who is this person? So, of course, I go on Instagram
Okay.
and I reached out to this person and I said, "Well, who are you?" He responds, he's POS.
Mm.
Now, everybody's heard the saying, "The enemy of my enemy is my friend."
Absolutely.
And I'm thinking, and I even talked to my current fiance and I said, do I listen to this person? Do I hear him out? Do I, say, "Okay, I'm leaving everything you say, whatever"? And she said, "Well, be careful." So I didn't ask him any questions. I just, I heard him out.
Okay.
And he said that my ex-wife was doing the same thing to him that she did to me.
Of course.
That he's been kicked out of the house and, you know, he had things on her basically that could destroy her. So I said, "Are you willing to testify?" And he said, "Yes."
Okay.
So I subpoenaed him. But because he wouldn't give me an address, I had to send it to my old address where the ex-wife lives.
Where he isn't at.
Right.
Yeah.
But he still got his mail there.
Okay.
So, of course, she sees an envelope from me to him,
Okay.
and now she's asking questions. She sees on the court website that I have subpoenaed him.
Okay.
And she's like, "What's going on?" And he goes, "I don't know. He's playing stupid. I don't know." So he shows up to court. He goes into the courtroom, and before he testifies anything, the other attorney files an extortion charge against him. That if he testifies anything against her client, he'll be charged with extortion.
On what grounds?
He had bought my ex-wife a brand new washer and dryer.
Okay.
In turn, she agreed to pay his cell phone bill, his car insurance, and I think his car payment or something.
Okay.
And he told her, that if he would ever be kicked out, that he would, take back the washer and dryer. And she, of course, said, "Well, I'm not going to pay your bills anymore." So, of course, if he was going to testify anything ill will against her, that would be extortion, because, he's basically throwing her under the bus.
Okay.
But one thing I did find out that he told me, and I decided to investigate it. He said, well, she was charged with shoplifting. Now, mind you, that's not horrible. She didn't have the kids with her, but she was charged with shoplifting.
I'm gonna.
That
I gotta clarify something with you if you're okay with that.
Go ahead.
So her attorney specifically threatened him with this, correct?
Correct.
Which is a third-degree felony
Right.
under Ohio's statute RC 2921.04, intimidation of a witness, victim, or attorney. Coincidentally,
Right.
it's an attorney intimidating a victim. How funny
Right.
is that? Did you file a bar complaint against her attorney? If it's
Not yet.
Did you?
Not yet.
Have you guys been in court yet over this?
No.
Okay.
No, I filed an appeal after the decision was done.
The problem
Of course,
the problem with appeals is you can't introduce new evidence.
no, I can't. But I filed the appeal of the decision, and I was basing it that, I wasn't getting a fair trial.
Absolutely.
I had evidence.
It's a 14th Amendment violation.
Correct. It was a 14th Amendment violation that I'm not getting a fair trial. I had evidence to submit, and it was not submitted because I was told I couldn't.
Okay.
I have asked the court, I've actually asked the court and her to provide evidence of why I have to have supervised visits, to which nobody has responded. I had filed a motion of preponderance of evidence, which
Okay.
forces the other side to provide evidence to support their claims of, DVs or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They have yet to do that.
Okay.
My ex-wife had spoken up at this last hearing and said that I cause a commotion when I come to see the kids play their games. And I asked for clarification. I said, what kind of commotion? You're claiming I cause commotion. I said, Your Honor, if me showing up to the kids' games and they're getting excited because they see their father rooting them from the sidelines, then I'm guilty as charged. She spoke up and said, well, at our son's championship basketball game, I blocked the door so they couldn't leave.
Is there any proof of that?
That was my question. Exactly. There's no proof. There's no pictures. There's nothing.
So let's take a step back and let's turn around and talk about how the handling of your case went, because to me it does sound like a full-on 14th Amendment violation, which for those that don't know is the right to due process. Coincidentally, under Troxel v. Granville, your parental rights are also covered, right? You have superior rights over the court, but the court is able to alter those rights in finding. So just for your sake, if you got a pen and paper on you, I would take this down moving forward for your kids. Wilson v. Wilson out of the 4th District in 2009 in Ohio. Last four of the case numbers 4976. So 4978. Covers the having your child testify. The age of that is 12 years old was the child that testified. Coincidentally, in PERS, that's PERZ v. PERS, 1993, a little bit older of a case law, but still, I don't know who Wilson is because I haven't opened up the full case, but age is also 12. So the general idea, based off the Court of Appeals in Virginia, or not in Virginia, in Ohio, is 12 years old. Generally, right? So Ohio's stance on children being able to testify is that they are of mental maturity, but it's been affirmed at least twice. So just something to use when you go into court, especially as pro se.
The court has interviewed the children.
Okay.
They did it on under camera, without attorneys, without any kind of legal representation. The judge, the original judge, had spoken to the kids
in the chambers, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's under their law that's what they're allowed to do.
Right.
Okay.
And based off of that, they're using that testimony against me. And I even said in this last hearing, I said, how can that be determined to be correct in the sake that, were the kids not coerced? Were they not coached before going into this questioning? Who provided the questions to be asked? I couldn't be there. I actually showed up to court that day because I told the kids when they were here at the apartment, I said, you guys are going to be meeting with the judge and, this is going to take place. I want you to tell the truth. That's one thing I've always pride myself with the kids is to always tell the truth. And, it was used against me because I talked to them about that. I talked to them about stranger danger.
Mm-hmm.
And, now the court's saying I'm talking inappropriately to the children. So we're okay allowing,
Under 3109.04 B2C, it says that you can request it, and the judge has to be able to articulate that there is no good reason not to.
Right.
So, and this is the stuff that a lot of people just don't understand. Whether you go into court with an attorney or you go in pro se, you have to be an expert on your case because nobody cares about your case more than you do. I just actually, other Brian, if you're watching this is a lawyer that I just had a conversation with. Him and me we've been getting along, bantering back and forth. But if you're watching this is a pro se litigant who is not getting the discretion of the judge that you believe is so frequently given. I've had this conversation with him over multiple courses where we discussed how as a pro se litigant, judges, they silence you, and they do it frequently. And he stood on the ground of no, judges give more leeway to pro se litigants. But I've been through chat rooms. I've never pro se represented myself, and now I'm in the realm of trying to do it. But I'm in the military. I'm very familiar with military law. Military law is written exactly as state laws and federal laws. So me being able to understand law is very, very easy. And I've been, over the course of my time, I've been in this fight since 2019. Have been able to refine those skills. But as a pro se litigant, in every aspect of this, judges look at you as a lesser, and they allow things like what you're describing. This attorney that's representing your ex-spouse is getting away with hearsay evidence, right? Which isn't evidence at all. Is getting away with coercion tactics, which is bar violations. I think it's, what is it? Rule 3.3 in most bars, or 4.1 in most bar associations. It's a rule violation. It's deception to the court, and they're getting away with it. But you, as a pro se litigant who knows the law because you took the time, and you don't know everything, but you are learning. Maybe you aren't fully familiar with the rules to evidence, and you're going to learn that as you go through. And typically, judges should be citing and correcting in the courtroom where you are learning it. So maybe you make a mistake here, but you can fix it down the road. But they're not doing any of that. They're allowing you. They're silencing you, which is illegal. It's a due process violation, right? And it's a federal violation at that. I actually, and I want to go into this because you mentioned filing a judicial complaint. I just filed a judicial complaint myself, and I watched the judicial committee tell me that they affirmed that my complaint was valid, but told me it wasn't enough to censor or remove the judge. But I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this for all the listeners. If a constitutional violation is not enough to remove a judge from the bench, then what are we doing having judges? Because if anything, our constitutional rights are more important than anything else in this case. And there's so much more going on than just that, and you're experiencing it constantly. So I'm gonna ask you this: when you are going through your case, Have you ever heard of Iraq?
Yes.
Okay, are you doing that for every issue that you run into in your case?
No, not every issue.
And I would recommend doing that because the things that are going to help you most is going to be when you're able to go into court and find things. I'll give you an example from my case. I have an appellate case that when I tell you mirrored my case exactly for the first 4 years of my case. I didn't know this until I started digging in. I knew about the case for a long time, but when I gave it to my attorney said that it didn't matter. He said it wasn't able to be used in my case, but after further investigation, I found out that's not the case. But anyway, the appellate case was not considered case law, but it still shows that a higher court ruled this way based off of the evidence of that case, right? Which matched my case identically. And those are things that we're not taught. You know, you're not told about, and until you find somebody that's willing to talk about it, or you find the citations online that help you understand it more. But a lot of the times, especially in family law is such an absurd law. It's a law written with no reason. It's a law written without like definitive answers, right? Because like I told you when I was reading Ohio's best interest standards, the will shall must. Why is it that they are required to enter into a single parent household, right? For primary or sole custody. But when it's a equal footing 50-50 household, they may do it. Why is it that it's an option for the children to have, you know, both parents, but it's a must to have a single parent?
Right.
That doesn't make sense, and that's what we're fighting, right? Is the idea of equal parenting, right? Because at the end of the day, it's not even about like who's mad at who. I'll be honest with you, a lot of what you're dealing with is just your ex is mad at you, right? And she's winning, right?
Oh, I know.
She's winning a battle. It's nothing
And,
else.
and and something I wanted to add, in March of 2020, child support had filed a contempt charge against me
Okay.
because I wasn't working.
Okay.
I was working at a job in 2020, 2021, and I ended up having a heart attack and a four-way bypass. Fun times, let me tell you.
Yeah.
I actually ended up having two heart attacks, but
I'm sure
uh,
from the stress of all this.
from the stress of all this, everything.
Yeah.
So I had filed for disability, and when you file for disability, it can take years to get approval,
Absolutely.
especially when they deny it the first time. You come back,
Hmm.
file an appeal, blah blah blah. I didn't get an attorney for that. I did everything on my own because the way I looked at it was, why should I get an attorney to file for disability when I have all the information with me?
Hmm.
So if the disability, you know, they want such and such a form or this, paperwork, I can immediately fax it to them, mail it to them, whatever. I don't have to go through a third party. So everything was done quick. Well, basically quick in my eyes. Um, I was finally approved in May 31st of 2023.
Okay.
And I started this back in May of 2021. So 2 years roughly.
Okay.
Well, the attorney for child support, she wanted to withdraw the contempt. Well, when we went to court in April of 2023, it was kind of a two-part court case. The first part was the contempt, the second part was child custody.
Okay.
Well, the court found me guilty of contempt and
Okay.
sentenced me to 7 days jail.
Because
So,
that
of
fixes it,
course,
right?
yeah. So, of course, being on disability, or I haven't been approved yet, I picked my date to show up to the jail. Um, the attorney for child support walked in to the judge and said, "No, we're withdrawing the contempt because he's now deemed disabled. We're going to get money from, his back pay to pay for the, child support."
Hmm.
The judge responded to her, no, he's still spending time in jail. And I thought, that bitch.
And
So,
they,
I did my time. I spent 7 days in jail.
yeah.
It wasn't the worst. I won't say that. I will say this. It wasn't the worst time in my life. I had met people in there. Of course, they found out that I'm studying law and they're like, they're coming to ask me questions. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, guys, I want to help you, but I can't
Yeah.
because I don't want to get in more trouble for practicing law without a license.
Yep. Absolutely.
I can make recommendations, but I cannot give you legal advice.
Yeah.
And one guy I had talked to, it was his second stint in jail. And I said, well, what was your first? And he said, because I beat the crap out of a guy.
Huh?
And I said, what for? And he said, well, I caught him trying to have sex with my daughter. And he beat the crap out of him.
Not all
And I
heroes
shook
wear
his hand and
capes.
I said, I'll support you 100%.
Yeah.
And, but the funny thing about all this, there was an attorney that I brought on for my contempt case because I'm not well versed in contempt.
Mm-hmm.
And he came in, he called me, and he said, Mr. Flynn, my name is so and so. I'm going to be representing you in your contempt case. And I said, okay. And he said, I first want to say everything that you have filed in court has been very well versed, very well worded. I commend you on that. And I said, well, thank you. I appreciate that. He goes, but you're pissing off everybody in Marietta. And I started laughing. And he goes, I don't know how that's funny. And I said, well, Bill, that's his first name. I said, well, Bill, I said, that means I'm doing my job.
Yep.
Because if I wasn't doing my job, why would they be pissed off?
Exactly.
So, I'm like you said, I may not know everything that has to do with law.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to look in that Wilson versus Wilson case.
And PERS v. PERS. Don't forget that
PERS v. PERS. And that's both in Ohio?
That is both in Ohio, yes.
Okay. That's the problem with living in West Virginia. It's a separate district. So anybody that's listening, you have to understand that, if your case is in Ohio and you live in West Virginia, you can't use West Virginia law in Ohio because it's a different district.
Absolutely.
So
and then it's crazy too, I have deep dived into this subject, right? Ultimately we're trying to find reform. I think a lot of reform has to come federally. That's just me.
Yeah.
But a lot of lawyers that are actually parental rights advocates think differently on it because each state is their own government. But the fact that we have such loose ideas of what the best interest of the child is. Again, I fought my case in Florida and then Virginia because it got moved to Virginia. Virginia has 10 items to the best interest of the child, right? And that's their statute is you have to meet these 10 motions to, these are all the best interests of the child, right? So under my mind, most people's minds is if I'm meeting all 10 of these requirements and you're only meeting 6 of them, who's the best interest? Right?
Exactly.
But that's not how they do it at all. The judge has full discretion like every other state seems to handle. Florida just recently went to the 50-50 is where we start, and you have to have a compelling reason to go against that, right? And now
West Virginia is the same way,
right? And states are slowly moving to that. Not all of them, right? A lot of them are very archaic, right? And then there's the pushing past that. We can make as much law as we want to about these changes that we want 50-50 custody. We want to guarantee that we start off on the same footing. We want to take away from these false allegations, the silver bullet that most people talk about. But the problem with that is there's still the one caveat. Judges have, number one, immunity, and number two, they have discretion to say whatever they want and do whatever they want. And, they can make a poor ruling or they can completely disregard the law. You can file your judicial complaint. You can file your appeal. And the appellate court could rule in your favor and say the judge made a bad call, but that still doesn't remove that judge or censor that judge. So that judge again gets to go back and do the same thing over again. All the judge needs is one variable that's different to do the exact same motion.
Yeah.
And this can happen 100 times, and there is no accountability for the judge. And it's crazy because when you start getting into the I want accountability, which is where I'm at, you look into it, and if a judge acts outside of the canons, acts outside of their judicial capacity, right? They are no longer immune. But that's not how these agencies are treating it. And that's the biggest issue is these agencies are prior judges, prior lawyers that have scratched each other's backs, probably did coke with each other, and are refusing to hold their counterparts accountable because, that's my friend. And that's the problem.
Well, and when I started this whole legal schooling,
Mhm.
my initial intention was to become a family law attorney.
Same.
And what pissed a lot of people off that knew that I was going into law was I wasn't going to be part of the good old boys club.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to go out to lunch and get you lesser time. I'm not going to go have coffee with, John Boy Billy Bob to put you in for life.
But
We got less than 40 seconds. We're going to have to
mine
restart this again.
mine says we have 9 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I thought
Okay.
that was 2 zeros.
Anyway, no,
So, but like I said, that was my intention at first.
mhm.
But after getting my master's, you know, I had gotten my master's through Purdue Global, and they work with Concord Law. That's
Okay.
out in California.
Okay.
Well, they passed a thing federally that West Virginia residents could not go to Concord Law. You know, it's not allowed. So I can't even get student loans to go through Concord Law.
You want to
But
hear?
my student loans itself are maxed out. I mean, it's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
You want to hear something crazy? You can go one state over, and you could take the bar with a bachelor's degree.
Oh yeah.
You go to Virginia, and they allow you to do to become an attorney with a bachelor's degree. There's very little requirements.
Well, and one of my friends actually reached out to me. She actually works for CPS of West Virginia,
Hmm.
and she had sent me this link saying, "Hey, if you're under disability, file this form and they initially wipe out your student loans." So of course, what did I do? I
Found it.
filled out the form.
Hmm.
But it also states a disclaimer that if it's wiped out, you cannot go to another college and get more student loans tacked onto it.
Yeah.
They'll forgive the initial portion, but you don't add on to it later. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. Just get rid of it's about 150 grand.
Yeah.
So
So I'm like you. I want to be I want to be a lawyer when I grow up. And
I'm 50 and I'm still not grown up, but I'm you
I
know I went back to college. you know I got my first degree in 2012, and that was in mechanical engineering.
mhm.
And then I went back to college in 2020 and got my associates and bachelor's in legal studies, and then got my master's, just graduated in May.
I
So you're never too old to learn.
so I got 8 years left in the military, and then I'll be starting law school when I get out. And I was very much on the same page of I am not going to be a part of the good old boys club. But as I got into the issues that you run into, these lawyers are. I think I want to give the benefit of the doubt. I think a lot of lawyers become lawyers for the right reason,
Yeah.
but I think the system is why they change.
Yeah,
Um,
it's the influence.
well, so look at it this way: if I'm a family law attorney and I go in there and I hold a judge accountable, or I hold my counterpart accountable, right? It is again a racketeering system to make money. I will submit cases for clients that will sit in limbo and not be picked up by any judges because they don't want to deal with it.
Right.
And yeah, there are laws that protect against this, right? But those are the same laws that are governed by agencies that refuse to hold judges and lawyers accountable.
Yep.
So, what are we doing here? We're expecting these people to uphold this system and not blackball an attorney doing the right thing. When in reality is we know that's not going to happen. And I think a lot of attorneys come in and spend probably their first 5 years learning that they have to kind of play ball.
Well,
Um,
and I've always said, when I filed my complaint with the Ethics Commission,
mhm.
they're not going to throw their own under the bus.
Absolutely, and that's what I was getting at with judges are supposed to be held accountable by their counterparts, right? The ethics
Right.
committee
It's a
is
check and balances.
yeah, but it's a system of people that are probably retired judges and retired lawyers that are running this program because the state has to have a program for it to hold their counterparts accountable, and they're not going to do it unless something crazy is happening. And my way forward is after you file these things and they deny it, file a rebuttal. But when you file a rebuttal and include a letter to your congressman.
Yeah.
Include a letter to your governor. Include a letter to you can send it out to everybody in Congress and the Senate. Who cares? Or in the House and the Senate. At the end of the day, but stir the pot. Stir that pot. But I will say this: you have to be careful of what state you're in. I read Ohio's statute on it. Until they have deemed it as closed. Where is it? Let me bring it back up real quick. All right. So once post certification enforcement is done, you can discuss it publicly, and once board certification is done, you can discuss it publicly. But prior to that, while the investigation's open, you're not allowed to discuss it. And that's something that's not a typical law people are familiar with. So don't put yourself in a bad position by discussing things early, but you are always able to send a letter to your congressman, and you can absolutely send a letter to your congressman about an investigation that you sent up that's already been denied once and it shouldn't have.
Well, I'll say this, and this is going to be a shout out to the groups on Facebook. I'm part of the Fathers' Rights Movement. I'm part
Mm-hmm.
of the Ohio Fathers' Rights Movement.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the Parental Alienation Group.
Mm-hmm.
They go by Papa.
Okay.
Um,
I know what that
get
is. Yeah.
get involved with these groups.
Mm-hmm.
You know, learn from hearing other people's you know issues with their court cases.
There's another one for you as well if you'd like it. Uh, I just recently found out about them, but they've been really good too. I think it's called USA Family Court Class Action Team, and then they have one for each state. But
I think I'm actually involved with that one now that you mention it.
And then we're here today because of the Father's Rights War Room.
Yeah, but I share constantly. I share things that are put on these sites, and I share it on my own page.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure people are sick and tired of seeing what I post.
Yeah.
But I was given an order under the court that I was not to discuss my own court case on social media. That's fine. But they came back and tried to file a contempt because when my fiance and I were at our my son's basketball game, I had taken a picture of him holding his trophy and I posted on Facebook congratulating him and his team on a job well done. They tried to take that picture and say that I was talking about the case. And the other judge, the old judge, she actually defended me and said, no, I don't see anything wrong with that. He was congratulating his son. That's not contempt.
Mm-hmm. It's I got when I do this a couple times, there's a website I'm going to use for podcasting to make this a lot better. But I wanted to try it out with Zoom. Obviously, I've spent a lot of money building this already. I'm using my photography equipment for a lot of stuff. But anyway, so you got censored, um, or you were attempted to be censored by opposing party, and then the previous judge had actually did their job appropriately,
Yeah.
and you know, which is annoying too, right? It should be a standard across the board, not between
Well, and
which.
it pissed off the other attorney. She threw the paper down on her desk and she's like, well, I still find it, it's contempt.
Yeah, of course. And then the crazy thing is I'm sure you said you're familiarizing yourself with how contempt works.
Mm-hmm.
Contempt has to be clear. It is wild to hear some of the stories that I've heard about like contempt hearings, because contempt has to be clear. If it's not clear in most states, because it is a criminal charge,
Right.
if it is not clear, it does not stand. And judges that are, and that's why juries need to be used for pretty much everything. I could tell you a lot of issues would be resolved if we use juries in family law. I firmly believe that. But the problem is being able to hold juries for that high of a capacity. But again, it would, if they did it, they would have to cut down on all of the frivolous activity that they do to make money.
Right.
Because you can't have six trials with juries over the cost of 2 years and have the same jury do it. People can't miss that much work for something that's frivolously being handled.
Well, and what's ironic is the old judge, she originally told my at our preliminary hearing in 2018, she told my ex-wife and I that her parents
Mm-hmm.
went through um, family court 19 years
Jeez.
of fighting for child custody. And what's still ironic with that is the attorney that represented her mother
Mm-hmm.
was the attorney that I had for my contempt case. So, I mean, he was on my side, he wasn't on my side. I
Yeah.
mean, at one point during COVID, he had gotten sick, and he's an older gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
He had gotten sick, and I asked him. I said, "Look, stuff needs to be filed. Do you want me to go ahead and file it? If you approve it." And he said, "Yeah, let's go ahead and do it that way." So I would send it to him. He would say yes, yay or nay. I'd drive up to Marietta, file it, and say this is on behalf of Bill Burton. Sorry,
Mm-hmm.
that's his name.
Mm-hmm.
And the court accepted it. But I'm finding out as I move through life
Yeah.
that my current fiance, her daughter, and this is kind of going to go way off the deep end here, but
That's fine.
her daughter is friends with a girl that works in the clerk's office in Marietta.
Okay.
And she has told my fiance's daughter that they know in the clerk's office that I am getting railroaded left and right.
Okay.
They know that I'm in there fighting all the time, filing all the motions, fighting for my kids' rights, but yet the court is railroading me every step they can. So if the clerks can see it, and they're not law students, they don't know the law per se.
Mm-hmm.
If they see it personally, then why isn't anything being done?
Who's going to hold them accountable?
Exactly.
It's that age old question. Who's going to hold them accountable? And that's the issue that we have, right? The human factor is always going to be there. I can tell you personally that if I were to adjudicate anything, right, my own biases are going to come out. My
Right.
own ideas are going to come out. And you can't take that away, but we can reel it in, right? You know that there are going to be, in some way, shape, or form, implicit biases when you're adjudicating a case, any case. Um, all you can do is minimize that. Putting these laws into place, following these laws. I think it's crazy stacking, you know, law that is civilly handled versus like military law, because when I see how cases are handled in the military, if it's cut and dry, it's cut and dry. And I've seen more proper handlings and adjudications in the military. I've been a bailiff on two different court martials that were handled very clearly. The judge did everything in their power to try to minimize as much bias as possible.
Yeah.
And then there was a panel, obviously, of a jury, but with that, and then you walk into these family law courts and you see these judges are running rampant every which way, and nobody's doing anything about it. And then you want to have hope, you want to have faith in the system. I forgot uh what canon it's written in. I can look it up, but it says that one of the most important things when it comes to the court process is that the public has faith in it. Well, I can tell you that's lost when it comes to family law entirely.
Oh yeah.
You know, um, and we sit here, we fight these battles over and over again. And I'll be honest, to me, it feels like when we walk into it, 9 times out of 10, the first idea that the court goes with is which parent is on a lesser foot, right? And then that's typically which way they're going to lean forward. If that's not the case, then it's going to be who made a filing first. And if that's not the case, it's who used the silver bullet. Who turned
Yeah.
around and made the false allegations? And then what are we going to do about false allegations? Little, if you want to jump off track a tiny bit, I recently had a situation. I made my neighbors mad 4 years ago, and they refused to be adults about it. Their response is they call animal control on me frequently, and pretend like they don't. But I had animal control come out a few weeks ago. The officer came out, did his job, spoke with me, and openly told me, he was like, I'm tired of getting phone calls like this. And he was like, no, we should be able to hold the people that make false allegations accountable.
Right.
And I was like, you're absolutely right. And he was like, he was called out saying that my dog was emaciated, because I have a puppy that, or had a puppy. She's with my dad right now, but she refused to go in a crate or a kennel. Hated it, would poop in it every chance she got. So I put her out in the yard a lot, just because it keeps her from pooping in a kennel. She coincidentally doesn't have any problems when she's in the yard. But they called and said she was emaciated. The officer came out. He was like, there's an empty food dish, which tells me she's fed. He said there's a water bowl there, or a water bucket, because I have a bucket out there because we live in Florida. It's hot. And he was like, the water was crystal clear. It's everything I need to know. He was like, I'm tired of these false allegations that get called because we can't do anything about it. And it's not even just in that situation. It's every situation. These people make these false claims, right? Your ex-spouse made false claims, and there's no accountability for it. And even Ohio law, I forgot what statute it is. Was it 31? No, that's child custody. Their law is that they are to hold false allegations seriously, and they don't. And it's not just them, everybody doesn't. They refuse to hold people accountable for it because they've created this idea that, like, family law is the Wild West. You could do whatever you want. If you want to win, and that the problem, and I don't want to take away from mothers at all, but for this statement specifically, fathers, we have an issue where we want to keep the peace. 9 times out of 10, we want to keep the peace, and we don't go in there guns a-blazing. We don't go in there throwing dirt and gasoline in the fire. And that's our biggest issue. I know I did it firsthand. I didn't want to fight over who had primary custody. I wanted my child to be in both homes. I wanted my child to grow up with as much of a normal life as she could without, suffering from a 2 household.
Well, when she told the judge that I was causing a commotion at the basketball game, blocking the door.
Mm-hmm.
What's funny about that is, my fiance was there. She had taken a picture of myself and my 2 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And in the picture, you can see one door.
Okay.
But there's 3 doors to the gym.
Okay.
So unless I'm fatter than Fat Albert, blocking all 3 doors, or jumping back and forth between the 3 doors, blocking their way among everybody else that was there. It wasn't just, myself, my fiance, and her family at the basketball game. There was hundreds of other families. So I'm blocking everybody's way out. There's only one locked door. When you have a sporting event, there's only one unlocked door. for an exit, that's a fire hazard, you
Yeah.
know? So whereas, her just saying that with no supporting evidence,
Mm-hmm.
that's a false allegation. So of course, when I filed my appeal, they'd have to set a court date up. I've got my ammo. I can go back in, with pictures of the gymnasium, the doors going into it saying, look, which door was I blocking if I was blocking a door to begin with?
Mm-hmm.
What about the other two doors? Why couldn't you go out those?
Yeah.
If you said that I was blocking your way out, that's what you claimed.
Mm-hmm.
And the POS, when he told me everything on Instagram, he had also mentioned about, the shoplifting, which I got the police report about. And it didn't just happen once, it happened twice with
Mm-hmm.
her. He also overdosed in the house. Now, he overdosed on Xanax.
That's good for the kids.
That's good for the kids. Now, the kids weren't there when it happened, but still the
Mm.
fact that he overdosed in the home.
And
Why isn't that?
if it
Go
happens
ahead.
if it happens once, it's probably happened twice.
Right.
So
And he also stated that she sells Xanax out of the house.
great for the
But
kids.
that one's hard to prove because I don't have proof of the buyer,
Yeah.
what she's selling. But he told me that she no longer gets Xanax pills from her doctor, so she can't sell them.
Mhm.
But, why isn't that being brought up? And that's what I was going to try to get out of him until the extortion charge was brought up.
I'm gonna ask you a stupid question we all know the answer to.
What's that?
Why is it that you have to prove allegations, but she doesn't?
Well, yeah, I wish I could answer that. My fiance, when she and I went to junior high together, that tells our age, but, 30 plus years ago, we went to school together. We've known each other all our life.
Yeah.
And seeing everything I share on Facebook, when I reached out to her asking her for, if she wanted to go to dinner sometime, she told me she had her, reservations about going because of everything that I was sharing. She's like, do I really want to get involved with this? Is this guy mental?
It's a lot.
What's his issue?
Yeah.
It is a lot. But after she came to my apartment and, I showed her proof of everything that I was talking about, showed her all the court documents, she says, it makes sense. Everything makes sense. And I said, I'm glad you're making sense of it because I'm living it and it still doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And it eats away at you.
It does.
Let's talk, if you're okay with it, let's talk about that a little bit. How it affected you, right? So when this started out, you didn't think it was going to be a battle like this. You didn't think 7 years down the road you were going to be sitting here doing this.
No, I actually thought from the very beginning when I had the kids every other weekend, 2 nights a week, I thought, okay, this is good.
Mm-hmm. It's happy, it's copacetic, it's not ideal, it's not you being there every moment of the day like you wish you would as a father, but
right.
It's not this.
and they, come Christmas time of 2018.
That me or you? I'm so good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, you cut out.
Oh, sorry.
Come Christmas time 2018.
Yeah, she said, she would buy the clothes for the kids. I would be handling the toys because, again, I'm a big kid at heart.
Mm-hmm.
So we did that. But
Okay.
of course, I'm not a mean person. So I bought her, my ex-wife, a couple of Christmas gifts. Get her involved as well.
Yeah.
She accepted them. I wasn't expecting anything back. I wasn't expecting her to go, oh, Brian, I'll come back to you, blah, blah, blah. I wasn't expecting that.
Just being
I didn't
nice.
want that. I was being nice. The kids were there. I wanted the kids to see that we were getting along.
Yep.
The kids have never once asked me why we're doing supervised visits.
Okay.
But when the supervised visits took place was right around our son's birthday.
Okay.
And I had said to the attorney at the time, I said, am I able to call my son and wish him a happy birthday? And he goes, no, there's no communication between him, only at the visitation center. And I'm like, what the hell? And so we have celebrated birthdays and Christmases at the visitation center.
So you can't talk to, you can't even talk to your children.
No, no. And the current court order
That's an
has,
injustice
you know,
itself.
it is complete bullshit. Pardon
Absolutely.
my French.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody, but I cuss like a sailor when it comes to talking about this
No,
stuff.
I understand completely.
I have not done anything personally towards the kids,
Yeah.
towards their mother.
Hmm.
She showed the court a picture. Now that this is hard evidence. Let me tell you, it's a picture of, I'm going to say someone, because she claims it's her, holding up her left breast
Okay.
with bruises underneath her left breast. And she told the court that I put those there.
But you can't verify it's her.
You cannot verify it's her. It does not show her face.
Okay.
There is no police report. There's no charges against me. I've never been charged for domestic violence.
Okay.
But yet the court goes, okay, well, he's committed domestic violence. So he needs to stay away from the kids. He's a danger to society.
So the court said that. Did you have a trial of domestic violence and a criminal?
No,
Okay.
nothing.
Okay.
Nothing.
So we just pick and choose how we interpret the laws because it clearly says what domestic violence is, and
Right.
if it's proven, you would naturally go through a criminal trial.
Yeah. I mean, the cops had shown up to the house one night. We had had an argument. I went to bed. I'm trying to get the kids to sleep. They're laying next to me. And next thing I know, she comes into the bedroom and she goes, Brian, there's cops outside the house. And I'm like, what? So I get up out of bed. We go to the front door, and there's an officer saying, they got to call a complaint. It was done, hearing screaming coming out of this house. So two officers came in. One interviewed her, one interviewed me. Nobody was arrested, and the cops left. That was it.
What the police report say?
Um,
Because that's what matters. You guys can say whatever you want. The police can lie. Actually, the Supreme Court has upheld that police can lie.
yeah, I never went back and got a police report of that night. I couldn't even tell you when that night was.
I would recommend trying to if you could. That's
I mean,
I had a similar situation, not with domestic violence, but I had to pick up my daughter, um, because they were playing monkey in the middle with my daughter, trying to keep her from me. And when I showed up, I used a police escort because I knew it was going to be an issue. My daughter was with the maternal grandparents. I showed up. The maternal grandparents were living on a tiny house on the property
yeah,
of their son. Um, and their son was a state trooper, I think. Anyway, I got sheriff and city police department to escort me. It was a whole to do. The grandparents, one of them was trying to fight me. They were screaming explicitives. I just walked in, grabbed my daughter when the police told me to, followed police instructions, and left. I didn't engage. But when I looked at the police report was written entirely different. The police report didn't talk at all about the police having to restrain the grandfather. The police didn't talk at all about explicitives. The police report discussed that basically, I showed up, enforced my rights, and essentially it made me look bad because it was tailored. And if I had to take a guess, it was tailored by the trooper requesting that they do so.
right.
Because we got to scratch each other's backs, right? And nepotism is a real thing. So that's why I say, you always want to look at the police report, see what the police wrote, because 9 times out of 10, you're gonna see a completely different scenario than what happened. You know, and
Well, it's funny you bring that up because at one of the supervised visitations, and I didn't find this out till a later time. Uh, I showed up and did the visit and everything was kosher.
Mhm.
Down the road a little bit, I had went to the visitation center and made copies of all the notes.
Okay.
And all the notes are basically the same. Father shows up, he brings snacks, he brings toys, blah, blah, blah. It's like a, skipping record. Everything's the same each time, except for one.
Okay.
There was one instance where, before I showed up, the observer had asked my daughter, how she's doing. And my daughter responded, not too well. And she goes, why? What's wrong? And she stated that they just came from the babysitter's house. And mind you, I don't know who the babysitter was.
Okay.
And the babysitter's 2-year-old daughter was taking pictures of my son's privates. And of course, the observer said, okay, well, let me get somebody else involved. So they went out because there's always an officer on duty. So the officer comes in and starts asking my daughter questions regarding those pictures. And she said, at one point, she said, were they deleted? And my daughter's like, I don't know. You're asking, at the time, she was 6
Okay.
and my son was 4. You're asking a 6-year-old if an adult had deleted pictures off of an iPhone
Mm-hmm.
of your brother's privates.
They
How
don't
would
know.
she know?
Yeah.
So, my question was it ever investigated? Was the mother charged? Was anything brought up about it?
Did the
And no,
did the
go
observer
ahead.
tell you about this?
No, I found it out through copying the notes because
Even
there's
worse.
different observers each time.
That's even worse.
Yeah. So now the observer that was there that day is now the administrator over the whole visitation center. And she's also a bailiff at the court.
Okay.
So I would have to subpoena her and the officer, who it now works for a different county within Ohio, to come and testify and ask them, was it ever investigated? Was there any charges brought up? And see what they say. And of course, I'm sure they'll say, oh, there was unsubstantiated evidence. They didn't find anything. Pictures were already deleted, blah, blah, blah. How do we know they weren't moved to, the dark web somewhere?
Yeah. Um, that's. I feel like that's a conflict of interest to begin with the fact that there are ties between the courthouse and the observation center.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
It's always been that way.
that just um a lot of people feel like that with Title 4D when it comes to child support, but I feel like in a lot of instances in family law there are monetary gains from all of these different agencies that work together, like GALs, guardian ad litems, or attorneys, visitation centers. They're all monetarily gaining off of this. A lot of states have requirements that the court picks the psychologist or the court picks the therapist um, for their cases, and these people tend to be the same people for
Yeah. And when
financial
it comes
gain.
to therapy, my kids are in therapy, but it just so happens that my ex-wife is in therapy with them. And
which
I
is
don't mean that, in separate rooms. She's actually in the same room with the kids.
is another conflict of interest.
Exactly. And has she provided the therapist's name? No.
Yeah.
It's
Um,
it's like the laws are meant for people to go by, but they're only meant for the person having to pay child support that's in the wrong, or that the court sees in the wrong, but the custodial parent doesn't have to follow them.
I have questions. Tying back into the administrator. Um, I'm looking up like how Ohio handles neutrality, right? Um, Canon 2 for the judicial conduct that judges need to disqualify themselves for impartiality. Is this bailiff the bailiff for your courtroom?
I don't think she is. No.
But she's a bailiff for court
The
in
court.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
In the family court system, I don't know what it is in Ohio. Do you guys use JD&Rs or do you guys use just the district court for family law?
I think it's just district court.
Okay. Is she a bailiff in the district court?
I mean, we barely go. I mean, we basically go into a hearing room.
Mm-hmm.
There's only 2 tables and the judges stand.
Yeah.
There's no bailiff in the room.
That's weird. Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
but
each
she's probably,
case is
probably a bailiff for the circuit court.
Yeah. They record every session.
Oh,
so
they
it's
do?
On the record.
You don't have to pay to do that?
Oh, there's cost.
Okay. So yeah, there's a court reporter present.
Well, no, there's not. I mean, everything is recorded. Okay. And then, if, like, say, for instance, I went in here not too long ago and I requested to have that last hearing upload to a thumb drive because I want to make sure if what I'm saying is true, that she only spoke one or 2 times. Okay. So how can her testimony be credible when she only spoke 1 or 2 times? You're saying that she is so honest that just her saying 1 sentence makes her the most honest person in the world with no supporting evidence? That's bull. And the bailiff came over, not the same bailiff that does the visitation center.
Yeah.
But she comes over and she plugged it in. She downloaded the hearing onto my thumb drive, and that was it.
Okay.
Now, if I request a written transcript of the case, then I have to pay for that.
Yeah. That's weird. Florida and Virginia is what I can talk on. They you hire a court reporter. They come in Virginia, they charge an arm and a leg. And then they charge you even more of an arm and a leg to give you a written transcript. Florida is a little more feasible as far as purchasing the transcript. And then as far as hiring the court reporter. I remember I paid $100 for most of my court reporters. And in Virginia, it was like I had a court hearing that got canceled. It was a weird situation. It was a contempt hearing. We called, rescheduled it, had proof of the reschedule from the clerk. They still held the hearing, and then I showed up for the rescheduled hearing, and they were like, "You don't have a court hearing today." But me and the court reporter showed up, and we were sitting there waiting. I got charged for that day, and it was like $300 because it would have been, an hour and a half contempt hearing.
Well, one thing I recommend to everybody, including yourself, if you are on a set income like I am, I don't know how each of the different states word it. I'm assuming it's the same way. I filed a motion of indigency.
Yeah, basically that indigent means, status.
Yeah, that basically means you can't afford shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So whatever they want to throw charges my way, go right ahead because I can't afford it anyway. So I don't know how they're ever going to get their money, but
there's also, and people don't talk about this, the courts have a fund. There's a fund for, like, in Virginia, there's a fund for guardian ad litem's. There's a fund for the tribunal. So anything like cases, there's a fund that, like, people don't talk about.
Right.
So yeah,
it's that hidden money fund.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, no, I hate the family law system. I hate how terrible it gets handled, and I'm sorry that you've had to go through it. And I'm sorry that any of the listeners have to go through it, and I hope that they can get things out of this. But
I always tell people, don't give up. As hard as it is, and as stressful as it is, I've survived 2 heart attacks, open heart surgery. I mean, and let me jump to that real quick. When we went to the hearing in 2023, I had actually had, because we've been to 2 different visitation centers. We did Ohio at first.
Yeah.
And then they lost the funding for out-of-state parents. So then I had to go to one here in Parkersburg, So we set that up. We were doing that. And then eventually they said, we can't do this forever. There's other families that need this center too. And Ohio got their funding back for out of state parents. So, but I couldn't just jump right back into Ohio. I had to wait for availability.
Yeah.
So I had subpoenaed the director of the one in Parkersburg to come and testify, and she did. And she had explained on certain dates because I told her bring notes for this date, this date, this date. There was a date where I had met with the kids right after my surgery, and anytime you have open heart surgery, they give you a pillow that you have to hold against your chest every time you sneeze or cough, or you could bust open your wound.
Yeah.
So I had this big red heart pillow, and the kids are asking, what's that for, Daddy? And I had to explain to them. And my daughter is more intrigued by stuff, and she wants to know everything just like me.
Yeah.
And she said, well, what did they do? And I said, well, honey, they had to open me up and work on my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, can I see? And I said, what do you want to see? And she goes, your heart. And I said, well, honey, it's stitched back in. You can't see it.
Yeah.
I said, but there's a scar there. And she goes, can I see your scar? So I was wearing shorts and a short sleeve shirt that day. And of course, there's somebody, sitting in a chair by the doorway, so I can't just grab the kids and run.
Yeah.
And, I pulled up my shirt to show my daughter my scar. Well, in court, she's going over that same, what happened that day. And she got to that point about me pulling my shirt up. And the other attorney goes, he pulled his shirt up in front of his daughter? I mean, making it sound like it's this big deal.
Yeah.
And Cindy, the observer, she said, she goes, well, I was right there. It wasn't a big deal. He pulled his shirt up, showed his daughter his scar, and put it back down. And she goes, well, don't you find that inappropriate? And she goes, no, I'm sitting right there as the interaction's going on. It's not inappropriate.
Yeah.
And Cindy even said it before I did. She goes, do people not go to a swimming pool
with their shirt off?
I mean, yeah, with their shirt off. You've got half naked people there, and nobody finds that inappropriate, but a man pulls his shirt up and you find that inappropriate?
What about the pedophile that lived in your house?
Yeah, and that's the issue that I brought up. I mean, why isn't people talking about that? I mean, yes, the court says, he was grandfathered into the law, but the fact is he still committed a crime in a different state, charged with it,
mm-hmm.
and you're allowing him to live in that house for 6 years basically.
Yeah, and that's the issue.
And I'm not supposed to be stressed out. I'm not supposed to be thinking of what could be going on.
Is there restitution for the 2 heart attacks you've had because of all the stress, because people can't take their head out of their own butts and do their job appropriately?
Well, no, because it can't be proven.
Right, but that's the problem. Is we're sitting here on a what's supposed to be equal footing and not receiving it.
Right.
And that's where like the line needs to be drawn. How many more heart attacks do you need to have? How much more stress do you need to endure? I can tell you, I get stressed out from dealing with this crap. Everybody else does.
Well, I've already told people, they can sit there and court order me not to talk to my kids.
Mm-hmm.
But if I see my kids out and about at the mall or something, and they are excited to see me and want to come up and give me a hug, I'm not going to sit there and turn them away.
Yeah.
I'm going to say hi to them, how they're doing, give them a hug, give them a kiss, whatever.
But sad.
If the court wants to make a big issue about it and throw me in jail because I'm loving my kids, then by God, do it. But I've told everybody that I've ever talked to about this case, because, I try to explain all the factors in this case. And like I said, I could talk about this for 3 or 4 hours.
Oh, yeah.
That, when it boils down to it, if I find out that this man, this piece of shit, did something to one or both of my kids,
you're going to prison.
I will own Washington County.
Yeah. Because
I will sue the pants off of every entity that has been involved in this case since day one.
Absolutely. Let's talk about what you've done to find accountability, to try to get corrections made. Right? So you've gone to court now for 7 years, right?
Yeah.
You're still on supervised visitation. So you filed a judicial complaint once, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Have you filed anything else? Have you written any letters to Congress? I know you're a part of parental groups, but what actions have you taken to try to find the accountability and correct what's going on?
So,
Because there's not going to be a change if you just keep walking in the court. That's the definition of insanity. The same action over and over again, expecting a different result.
I basically, it's kind of a sit and wait.
Okay.
You know, karma's a bitch.
Absolutely.
Karma comes around.
Okay.
She's good. She's going to mess up some way, somehow. Um, when I had gotten word, because I had bought a Camaro, a 2014 Camaro, and she co-signed on it.
Okay.
Um, it ended up being repoed.
Okay.
Not my best point in life, but it was repoed. But because she had co-signed on the loan, she's also responsible for that money.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was terminated from my employer in 2021, I had sued them because I was fired while laying in the hospital. You can't do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
know.
Federal
And
laws about this.
we settled out of court, and when we went to court there in April 23, the judge said, and it was court ordered, that my ex-wife would take, basically it would be considered alimony, even though she didn't want alimony. The court considered it alimony, basically a portion of the money that she would get from the back child support to pay for this car loan,
Okay.
pay the note off. Well, she didn't do that. She called the financial institution and she settled for a balance of, you know, the amount was like $9,000. She settled for five. So she didn't pay it all off. So the
Okay.
amount is still there. So I filed a motion to, show just cause. Well, the judge threw it out this last hearing. She said, because I don't have any paperwork stating the law regarding it. And I'm thinking, it was a court order. I, attached the court order to it.
Stating the law. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I'm just dumbfounded as everybody else. I have been filing motions upon motions where she doesn't let me know of kids' events because the original judge said, and I quote, because I will never forget this phrase. She said, Miss Flynn, it doesn't matter if your child is the third buttercup in the school play, you're still supposed to tell your ex-spouse when the school play is.
but there's
And
been
that's on the record.
but there's been no accountability for every motion you filed.
No,
Oh.
there's not. She canceled a lot of these motions with prejudice, which means I can't go back and
Yeah, nope.
refile.
I'm familiar with the law.
Yeah.
Okay. Alrighty. So you have multiple motions that you filed that were dismissed with prejudice, right?
Correct.
With that, were those included in your bar, or not your bar complaint, but your judicial complaint to the what is it, the JIRC there? The
No,
judicial.
I did no, none of the current motions that were filed was included in the complaint because the complaint was done back in 2020, I believe, or 2021. Um, because that attorney that came on for my contempt, he's the one that told me that the judge rents farmland off of my ex-wife's family. So of
Okay.
course I ran with that.
The ODC,
I got
ODC, right? Is that who you filed with? The Office of Disciplinary Counsel?
yes.
Okay. Alrighty.
So, he's the one that informed me of that. And then all these motions are filed after the fact. But like I said, that last judge has moved north. And
Yeah.
at one of the hearings, and it was in I believe it was 2024. I don't know, I don't remember the month. I had asked her at the end of the hearing, I said, Your Honor, because, I had a closing statement. I said, Your Honor, I have but one question. I said, I want to know how a pedophile has more rights to my kids than I do.
Mm-hmm.
And she stated, I'll get back to you on that. And of course, she never did because she left.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably why she said it, because she knew she was leaving anyway.
Yeah. I mean, there's a possibility for sure.
And every time I've gone to court, I've always had evidence with me. Whether it be police reports where she was shoplifting, the therapist notes from my
Yeah.
therapy sessions. I've subpoenaed numerous witnesses. There was a court case where I had 3 different witnesses sitting out in the main portion of the courthouse,
Okay.
waiting to be called in, and the hearing ended. The witnesses were never called in. So basically, I subpoenaed these people for nothing.
Were they not called in because you didn't call them in?
No, there was never a point to call witnesses in. She knew that I had witnesses there, but they were never called in.
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with Ohio's entry of evidence and the rules to entry of evidence.
Right.
So I can't speak on it, but typically in most states, right, they teach you in law school, if as you go through the hearing, the different segments of your hearing you're going to go through, right? So if you go to the stand or you put your spouse on the stand, that is typically the time where you'll go back and forth, where you'll go through cross, and then you'll call your witnesses. That's how most courts handle it.
Right.
Did that happen where either of you got put on the stand during that hearing?
No.
Oh, yeah, that's so. And that would be something you file a grievance on, actually, right? So you file your grievance on the fact that there is clearly subpoenaed witnesses for today's court hearing, right? Now, if you have a court hearing that is 30 minutes, you shouldn't subpoena witnesses. You don't have time. There's not time to even do cross on one witness. In 30 minutes, you're mainly going to go through an introduction, the basis of your case, and then a close. You're not, typically you use 30 minutes for something like a simple contempt, or like just a summary hearing to get some information real quick. But when you start looking at witnesses, you need at least an hour. And the more witnesses you add, you need to add to that time. You need to account for cross, because cross can be back and forth
Right.
on the same witness over and over again. But with that, let's talk about accountability. Let's talk about getting things fixed, right? So you have multiple with prejudice orders on motions you filed. My suggestion would naturally be for filing more ODC or ODC complaints against the judge, right?
Yeah.
Using resources, right? I always am a firm believer of finding a paralegal that you can trust to help you really fine tune whatever you're doing. But again, you went to school for legal studies, so you have an idea of what you need to be doing. But I would file ODC complaints. I would definitely look at filing a bar complaint against your opposing counsel, because there are instances where bar complaints need to be handled. I would be next time you go into a full trial hearing, I would definitely put on a show, get as much information as possible in there, following the rules of evidence, and I would absolutely be prepared for an appeal, because that panel of, I'm assuming they use three judges in the appellate court up in Ohio. More than likely, those 3 are going to be the ones that side with you and ask the right questions. You can't enter new evidence, but at least you can get a fair trial. And it sucks because appeals are the idea is great, but the build up to getting there. A lot of times you walk into court and you get blindsided by stuff you didn't expect. So when you go
Right.
when you go to an appeal, it's like, well, what I needed isn't on record. So, but I would definitely work on trying to build for an appeal. 7 years, essentially 6 years of supervised visitations with zero incident to stand behind it is asinine. Your kids are going to be 18, and yeah, they're going to have their own opinions, and we've heard it 1,000 times. Our kids are going to grow up. They're going to hate their parent that's doing it to them, or whatever the case may be. They're going to have their own opinion, but like, that's not good enough. Your kids had to grow up for 18 years, with part of that being very detrimental. They didn't deserve that. They didn't ask to be here. They weren't the choosing of being brought into this world. You chose that. You and your ex chose that. And like, we can't guarantee people being amicable back and forth with each other, right? You've got, especially with how frequent, narcissistic actions are. We all have narcissistic actions. The idea of wanting to win is there and it's prevalent. But our kids, at the end of the day, they're the ones suffering through all of this. They're the ones that are getting hurt.
I've made the comment over the years that, I mean, I'll admit, I'm not perfect.
None of us are.
I'm not the perfect parent. I'm not the perfect father. I'm not the perfect spouse. We all have our problems, I mean, my fiance, she's as crazy as I am, sometimes even crazier.
Yeah.
And sometimes, crazy works. We get along great.
Yeah.
But one thing I've always stood by with this court is I've done nothing wrong. I don't have anything, hard concrete evidence against me, to show where I caused a DV. Any evidence against the kids, any evidence of any wrongdoing. And yet I'm the one jumping through hoops. And I thought when I had to do the parental fitness, they came back with suggestions. He has to maintain a job. This is back in 2020. So, I had to maintain a job for 6 months or more, maintain a steady household living environment. Because at that time, I was living with a girlfriend that I was dating.
Mm-hmm.
So, my household was not stable. I will say that. It wasn't stable. But now I've been in this apartment now for, it'll be 5 years this October.
Mm-hmm.
Work-wise, even though I am technically deemed disabled, and anybody that's disabled will know what I'm about to say, I'm pulling my hair out because I'm not doing anything. I spent most of my life working my tail off, and now being told, hey, you can't do anything. I can't just sit in my apartment and not do anything. Yeah. I can't do it. It drives me nuts. And then to add on top of that, the stress of all this going on, what's going on with my kids? Are they happy? My sleep schedule is so messed up. It's ridiculous. I've been told, well, start taking sleeping pills. Mm-hmm. I don't want to take sleeping pills. Yep. I was put on Xanax and Buspirone after my open heart surgery to deal with anxiety.
Yeah.
I had to get off of them because I couldn't stay awake.
Yeah.
So because I couldn't stay awake, I wasn't eating. And I went from weighing 240 pounds down to 185.
Yeah.
I mean, I just look sickly. Now I'm back up to about 225 and I feel fine. My sleep is still kind of meh.
Yeah.
But, you cope with it.
Yeah.
And my weekly therapy sessions, they are weekly now because the court ordered them to be weekly, which is stupid because, this parental fitness said I had to do bi-weekly, which we were doing bi-weekly. But then this other judge comes back and says, well, you have to do weekly. So I told the therapist, we got to start doing weekly now. And I, went to bring in proof to the court. And she's like, no, it has to be oral testimony. I won't accept written. It's like, what else do I need to do to prove to the court that I'm doing what is being asked?
The real question is, why is it that you have to jump through so many hoops?
Right. My ex-wife, she's not being told to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
She's not being told to provide evidence. She's not being told to have a drug test done. For all I know, she's doing coke. I'm not saying she is, but if she's selling Xanax, who knows what other kind of drug she's doing and what was introduced to her from the piece of shit.
Yeah. So let me. All right. So obviously, this is the first episode of the podcast, right? Um, you know, we heard your case. And there's so much more that we haven't talked about, right?
Oh, so much.
And I could say that firsthand because if I went into my case, I would need like a week.
Yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. With that, all right. So there are things that I want to see with this podcast, right? I want to see. I really want to see change. I want to see, everybody on the same equal footing. I want to see the circuses kind of stop. But more than anything else, like people that come on here, I really want to see everybody that comes on here start putting in the complaints, start filing the accountability, and not just filing the accountability, but sending those letters to Congress too, right?
Yeah.
I people all the time nowadays, and I don't want to get political. People nowadays, everybody's got their political idea, and everybody's been so target fixated on the president right now, but like Congress is the one that's making these changes. We need to hold them accountable. We need to send these letters out. We need to demand that our voices are heard because we are the people, right? So with all the smoke and mirrors, everything going on in the world, I ask and I urge that you send a letter to Congress about the issues that you are having, right? And you can send one, or you can send, how many seats are in the House right now? 514, 543. I don't even remember.
432.
Yeah, right. There's a lot.
Yeah.
And they're trying to do an increase over the next 6 years anyway. So with that, you could send one, or you can send it to everybody. But the point is, send the letters out, file the judicial complaints, file the bar complaints, and when you do it, when they kick back and they refuse to do their job, if you have grounds, things such as 14th Amendment violation, resubmit, detailing the amendment violation, and then include that you will also be sending a letter to Congress. Congress cannot force the body that handles judicial complaints to do their job. They're not able to, but what they can do is they can create legislative change. And then more than that, you always have the ability to use the media. I've found cases that the media forced judicial consequence, and that's sad. But you know what? That's what the media is there for too, right? Now, do they want? If it's a good headline, they're going to run with it. If it's not, they won't. But we need to use those avenues. We need to have our voice heard. And with this podcast, I want to do that. So I'm going to ask you if you could put together those complaints, and if you would, and you're willing to, because I know you're very open, send them to me, and we'll include them in the podcast. And I'll make sure people know that, like, hey, each podcast that I have, that we're looking for accountability. We're not just talking about it. We're demanding,
Right.
And I'll include my judicial complaints. I'll put all my stuff out there as well. But I wanna get everybody on board with holding accountability. With that, I want to wrap up our live session. I'm going to talk with you off session after this, but I want to wrap up our live session. If you're okay with that.
That's fine.
All right. So this was the Equal Parent Project podcast, presented by Diablo Moto Media Productions, LLC. We had Mr. Brian Flinn discuss his case, and the injustices that happened within that case. I thank you for coming on the session.